The issue with relationships in 2023, especially in the West, is, I mean, besides the breakdown of the nuclear family, um, the pill, the no-fault divorce, um, social security, transfer payments through the taxation system, and overall modern technology, security, all of that. It has changed the landscape of dating and relationships profoundly. Through history, women have needed men for protection, provisioning, and parental investment when they have kids. And men have needed women to have kids for sex, for somebody to nurture the offspring, take care of the home while they're away, bringing the bacon into the household. Now, with the transfer payment, Social Security, a very safe society overall, so the eradication of random violence and a functioning state apparatus, police, firefighters, all of this. Women no longer need men. Women are enrolling in college to a higher degree than men. Depending on the field, it could be anything from 50-50 to 70-30, especially in social sciences. Obviously, it's true that when it comes to STEM, so science, technology, engineering, and math, there the enrollment is male dominated. But that's just because of choice. If women wanted to go into these fields, they could, but they choose not to. However, so women, when they go to the workforce, they get to support themselves financially. They don't need, I mean, there's no risk of violence on a normal in a normal life. So they don't need protection and they don't need provision. They don't need the resources of a man. And what does that mean? It essentially means that women only want men that they actually are attracted to. And that means it's a very small proportion of men. There's been plenty full of studies in the dating apps, such as Bumble, Tinder, Hinge, and women consider more than 80% of men in those sites to be below average attractive, and they swipe right on perhaps 4 or 5% of them, whereas men actually swipe about 50-50, and they consider 50% of women to be above average. So the landscape already when it comes to dating is very skewed. Not to mention that when you've got social media apps like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, the amount of attention that women can get in these apps is hugely disproportionate to what men get. Now, when women don't need men anymore, but they can support themselves and they only desire a small proportion of the men, what does that mean? Essentially means that a relatively high proportion of women have access to a very small minority of men that they actually want, which means that the majority of men are left out. So they don't have dates, they don't have sex, they don't get relationships because they're too average. Women don't have that genuine burning desire for them. And it means that then the guys at the top 5 or 10%, they get the opportunities with multiple women. So that brings in the dilemma of when the top guys get access to, let's say, half or the majority of women, they don't really have an incentive to settle down, right? Because it is a man's challenge to, let's say, get a date and get sex from the woman. And it's a woman's challenge to get the man to commit to her. The problem is, for women to get sex is very easy, but for men it's very difficult. And this is something that women don't always understand, as well as lots of women conflate two things, which is sexual interest and relationship interest. So if a man shows sexual interest, most of the time it doesn't mean the same thing as relationship interest. So this is a very classic way to explain it. If you have a woman that's a on the look side of it and in terms of attraction in the dating market, she's a 6 out of 10, but she can sleep with a guy that's 8 or 9 out of 10. She tends to believe that she could land such a guy in a relationship. So she believes she's actually higher in sexual market value than she actually is. And she might have sex with multiple, 5, 10, 20, however many of guys that are a couple of points above her in terms of dating market value. And she probably is not willing to admit that these guys will never commit to her because she's a 6 out of 10. When she's got those experiences, you could also call her an alpha female. Alpha female, I mean alpha widow. Sorry, man. So when she's been alpha widowed, but she can only get a relationship with a guy that's 5 or 6 or top 7 out of 10, she's never going to have that genuine burning desire for the guy because she knows she's had better. So what does that leave the guys, right? Basically, they get leftovers from, the top guys who have their play on the market. And then you've got lots of these tropes of both the guys that are average, they're incels, so they complain about it and they get angry at women, which is, I would say, it's not founded. It's just unfortunate, but that means you just need to level up. And then you get a lot of these tropes from women saying, oh, all men are dogs and they just want to have sex, etc. And generally, how you interpret that is these women got together with a guy, I guess, sexually, but the guy was not willing to commit to them. And then they're disappointed, but instead of taking accountability, thinking, well, what did I do wrong or was I not enough for this guy? They say, oh, it's the guy's fault. And so it's kind of, from men understand it, like if a man has got an abundance of choice of women, it takes an exceptional woman for the guy to commit into a relationship, whether it's monogamous or it's predominantly monogamous or the sort. So this is what has led to the breakdown in society because the top guys get the most access and they don't want to commit. And then the rest of the guys they've got leftovers to an extent. And also the feminist trope is saying, okay, women, you can be equal to men. And they translate that, funny enough, that they encourage women to take the worst, let's put it this way, on an ethical sense, from male nature, which is spread the seed, right? This is the biological imperative that men have, is spread the seed. And they say, oh, women, you can do the same thing. While psychological research has shown it many times over and over that promiscuity in women has got far more negative effects than it has for men. For example, women have the oxytocin release after sex, and the more sexual partners they have, the less oxytocin they can produce. So that's a pair bonding issue. Also, marriage happiness rates decline, divorce rates go up the more sexual partners a woman has had prior to said relationship. And obviously then, if she has a promiscuous past, she's in a relationship, a marriage, things are going a bit south, well, what's the cure? She's just gonna go find somebody else for fun or just to monkey branch to the next guy. So I understand the logic. If I was a woman in 2023 in the West, and I'm like, okay, so this is the hand that I'm dealt with, I would probably be suspicious of men. I would just disregard the 80% of men that are just not interesting. I'm not attracted to them. And what's left is a top 20 or 10%. Then I'd be like, well, these guys are kind of players, which to a great degree is true. But then you come to the point where a woman says, oh, well, I'm a princess, I deserve the world. Okay, great. What is so special about you that this high level guy, this top tier man, should, number one, be interested in you and commit to you and stay faithful to you? Like, what is it that you bring to the table compared to the next 10 girls, right? And that's a very difficult question. Most women get triggered when you ask that. So the so-called demand or the requirements that a lot of women have is the guy should be tall, he should be intelligent, charismatic, smart, educated, rich, confident, strong, in shape, you know, tick the 78 boxes that they want. And on top of all this, I mean, already the requirements they have, that's like 1% of the male population. And on top of that, they say, oh, but he should be also faithful to me. And that basically puts it in like, okay, you want to win the lottery? That's what they're asking for. It would be similar if men would say, oh, well, I want a woman that's attractive, young, fertile, kind, caring, loving, faithful to me, but also she should look like a playboy playmate, right? And just love me for me. So I think there's a sense of unrealistic expectations in the dating marketplace, and that leaves most people dissatisfied to an extent. And also, when we look at the birth rates in the West, they're down. They're well below replacement level. The only groups in the West that actually have a replacement level and above in terms of fertility are the first and second generation migrants from predominantly developing countries, because they appreciate the economic opportunity of coming to a country where things are way better than where they came from. And then there's also a small caveat with the, let's say, religious groups. Um, well, Mormons, for example, that refuse to use protection, so they have lots of kids. And then the individual here and there, couple who says that they want to have 5, 6 kids. Um, question is there a cure for this? Or should there be a cure for this? I don't know. Um, but it's unrealistic to expect that we could turn back the clock and go back to the 1950s. Not that we would want to, um, but yeah, this is a problem for the 2020s and beyond. And yeah, if anybody's got a great solution to it, how to fix it and how to, and also one of the key components is that the more freedoms and equality Western society has provided, or essentially Western men have provided for women, the less happy they are. When you look at the surveys from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000, 2010s, the subjective sense of happiness and fulfillment in life for women, it has gone down consistently. So why is that? This is a good question for the women to ponder upon. And obviously then there's that blame game. Well, is it the women's fault? Is it men's fault? Should women think again like what's going on and kind of readjust? Should men step up or man up? I think all of those kind of approaches have their validity. Kind of depends on what angle you're looking at it. Anyways, that's my 2 cents on the topic. Peace out.